to record this session and make it available to people who were not able to be here live but signed up for the session today. So thank you for that. Well, I'm Bonnie Brown. I'm the president of Humane Network, and my colleague Diane. Did you want to introduce yourself, Diane?
Hi, I'm Diane Blankenberg, and I'm the CEO of Humane Network. Happy to be sharing some thoughts with you all today.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, with that, we will get the show on the road. The first thing we're going to talk about is what we're going to be covering in the presentation today. The way that we'll be talking about these things is going to be sort of general, I suppose, because among you who are on the call today, there could be folks who are board members, executive directors, development directors, volunteers. So depending on your role, the way you use this information could be slightly different. But in any case, the first thing we're going to cover today is helping to overcome the fear of fundraising. The next thing we're going to talk about is how you can share the fundamentals of fundraising with your board of directors and things that board members can do to raise funds. That's the third topic we'll cover. And then lastly, we're going to talk briefly about a framework you can create to help ensure board member participation in fundraising and in a way that is comfortable and going to be effective for every board member because everyone is different. So off we go with overcoming fear of fundraising. If you've talked to your board about fundraising, this may be one of the first comments you hear. Oh, I couldn't do that, or that sounds very horrible or intimidating. Whenever we're talking about money, I think a lot of people feel a little uncomfortable. But fundraising is actually a skill that you can learn, and it does not have to be as intimidating as it sounds when you are first imagining what it's going to entail. And this is one of the things that I like to remind people when they tell me they're afraid of fundraising. It's that it's all about creating relationships. That's the fundamental basis of fundraising. And so when you think about it that way, it loses some of the fear factor about asking for money. We've already got a really great cause, and a cause that many people share our passion for already. So as we develop relationships, the giving and the communication about giving can really start to unfold much more naturally than you might imagine. So this is another thing that you have all got on your side. It's that we are enthusiastic for our cause. You are all here today because you care deeply about animals and about raising the funds that you need to help save them and to give them better lives. And this enthusiasm, this passion that you have for this cause is one of your greatest assets. And this is going to be true of all of your board members. And really, most people in this field feel a deep, abiding passion. And when you get right down to it, a genuine enthusiasm for this work. And that is very attractive. So I'm going to go through a few of the most common fears that people express. And what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to use this information in talking with your fellow board members or your board members, if you're the executive director or the development director. So one of the most common things that we hear people say is that they just feel uncomfortable because they're asking people to give money, and that is very stress-inducing. But what you need to keep in mind is that people feel really good when they give money to a cause that they care about. So rather than asking people to give up something, you're actually giving them an opportunity to make a difference. You're giving them a chance to help animals in need and to save lives. And so you are giving them a gift by giving them an opportunity to help animals by giving to your organization. The second common factor is that when we think about money, we think how uncomfortable we feel when we have to ask for a raise or When we have to ask someone for money, they owe us. These things are very stress inducing, right? But you are not asking for yourself here. You're asking for the animals. And the money that you raise is going to equal more lives saved. So it's so crucially important to remember that. You're asking for the animals, not for yourself. And that, for me, makes it a whole lot easier. And, animals have touched your hearts. That's why you're all here. So when you focus on the animals, you're going to touch others' hearts too. So just keep your focus on the animals. So another thing to keep in mind is that your love of animals is greater than the anxiety that you feel about learning about fundraising or asking for a donation. It really, truly is. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that you can fundraise without being the one to make the ask. There are lots of elements of fundraising, and we're going to talk more about those. Diane's going to go in depth about this, but reminding people of that just because you're nervous about fundraising doesn't mean you have nothing to contribute or you can't possibly do it. There are many elements of fundraising that even shy people can participate in. Another misconception or common answer when you talk about fundraising is people say, well, I just don't know any rich people. But that isn't the point. It is really about knowing rich people. Most donations to even the largest organizations in the nation are relatively small. And so also you grow donors. So it's just starting at a small, low level. It doesn't have to be finding a person who can give $10,000 or even $1,000. You're talking about smaller amounts, and it is not at all important to have contacts with people who are exceptionally well off. Another thing to keep in mind is that it's really important for board members and others who fundraise to make a meaningful donation yourself. That way, you're not asking anyone to do anything that you have not already done yourself. And it also really enables you to think about, why do you support this organization? And then you can share that with others. It's much more comfortable asking for gifts when you yourself are a supporter. And by that, I mean an actual donor. And when you feel uncomfortable, another crucially important thing to remember is that our work is full of miraculous and amazing and wonderful stories. When you do it every day, it's really easy to forget this fact. These photos represent a little story. This was a kitten. You can see an animal control officer there. She's bathing a kitten that is covered in black stuff, and she had rescued that kitten. Someone heard cries inside of a chimney, and she rescued that kitten, brought him back to the shelter, bathed him up. You can see how he's starting to look better, even though he's still got some smudges on his face. And the last photo is in his adoptive home with a family that absolutely adores this little guy. And these stories are exactly why donors like to give money. Also, as humans, we're just hardwired for stories. Before we had, the written word to document things that were happening, humans passed down information and values through stories. And so we're absolutely hardwired for stories. We love them as humans. In fact, the Network for Good did a study, and donors tend to give twice as much when they're presented with a story about an affected individual, as opposed to reading a lot of numbers or just information about the overall scope of the problem. So it's very powerful to focus on stories about one animal, and it is the common thread that you have with everyone who's going to donate to your cause. You all care deeply about animals. So these kinds of stories can really engage people emotionally and break the ice of the fear of awkwardness when you're talking to someone about your organization. So just to wrap up on this, when people say they're afraid of fundraising, I just try to remind them that they are inspiring giving, and giving benefits the giver. It helps them fulfill their personal values, and it just plain makes people feel good. You know how you feel when you give to a cause that you care about, whether it's your time or your money, and this is really true of pretty much everyone who has potential to give feels good about it, and you're giving them that great opportunity. So if you think about all these things, it can help you let go of some of the anxiety, and it can help you talk this through with others on your team who may be feeling anxiety. This is a quote that both Diane and I love very much. Fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. And when you think about it that way, it just totally changes what fundraising is, I think, from trying to asking them to engage in an activity that benefits everyone. It benefits them, it benefits the animals, it benefits your organization.
Alrighty, so I'm going to take it from here and talk about how you can share the fundamentals with your board. And this is our other second or other favorite quote, I should say, for both Bonnie and me. It was made by Richard Avanzino years ago in the early days of the so-called no-kill movement. But to me, it sums up so perfectly and so succinctly what this is all about. You do good work, you tell people about it, and you ask them to help. We're all doing good work. Some people are telling some people about it, but not enough. And many are not specifically asking, and people want to be asked and want to share in that joy of giving that Bonnie just talked about. So when a few of you that maybe joined this session early might have seen a poll question pop up that asked, where do you think that most charitable donations come from? And I don't know if anybody, well, I'm sure you thought about it, but I don't know what you think. You want to put into chat maybe what you think is the major source of charitable funds for most nonprofit organizations? Just give you a few more seconds. I see them popping in there now. So we have individuals, small donations, individuals, private individuals, corporations, grassroots donors and corp grants, individuals, grants. So I'm pleased to see that, because most of you are correct. If you'll see in this chart that large biggest piece of the pie is the individual giving, and actually businesses are included in that. I think there was only maybe one other that said something different. But in spite of thinking that, you'll find a lot of organizations are putting their major efforts into some of the other categories, especially events, which can be quite time consuming and don't necessarily have the return. But just looking at this and understanding and keeping this in mind, that you want to focus on your efforts on what's going to get the biggest return for you. And as Bonnie and I work with a lot of different clients around the country, we just see a lot of missed opportunity in the individual gift category. So for board members to be successful in helping with the fundraising or representing the organization in general, they really need to understand what the financial status is of the organization, what the needs are, and what the fundraising plan is. And I say that knowing that many organizations, especially the smaller ones, maybe don't even have a fundraising plan. And that's okay. You can put one together. This is a sample one that we put together kind of in template form. And we will provide this on our website, or it is on our website, I should say, so that you can access it and download it and use it for your organization if you don't have one. And even if you do have one, it's kind of a good checklist to make sure that you're really covering all the different strategies. And if you do already have it, you just want to be sure you're sharing it with all of your board members, and of course, key staff too. We work a lot with developing boards, and I've found over and over in recruiting new board members, and I found that most are not given a lot of information in the beginning. So just want to be sure that they're well informed and can obviously be able to represent the organizations and the needs appropriately. That fundraising plan should really target a lot, or a variety of audiences, I should say, and some of those are listed here with different ways that you might be reaching out to these folks. We don't want to be going for the same folks all the time, and it's especially important. I mean, obviously your current supporters are key, but you also want to expand that to get to other people that care about animals but maybe aren't aware of your organization or just haven't been a supporter in the past. And I'm sure everybody is aware how important thanking your supporters is. And even when one or an organization understands the importance, it doesn't mean that the process is always well thought out or well executed. I think one of the biggest problems is being timely with it, if you do them at all. But I don't know how many times I've heard of organizations that do not thank people, or I've personally received thank you notes that aren't even that have errors in them, or aren't even appropriate, or haven't been tailored to the specific organization. You'll see these are all samples from when Bonnie and I were at Nevada Humane Society, and you'll see Bonnie has put a little note on the letter. I currently do these for our nonprofit clinic that we run, and I know Bonnie in the past and myself currently, we hear regularly from people of how much they appreciate that little simple sentence or two that's handwritten, even though they know they're getting a form letter in a sense. So there's a lot of different ways to show thank yous, thanks, or show appreciation rather. And you just putting together a comprehensive plan of how to do it and then being able to execute it in a timely fashion. But this is an area that your board, or if you are board members, that you can help with. And it is time consuming, but it is, as Bonnie said, about the relationships, and it's a great task for board members. The other things that board members need to know in order to be able to represent the organization well and build relationships with potential donors is listed here. So the organization's mission and goals are obviously important, key strategies and any special initiatives that are going on, and key messages and talking points or case for support. I think this is an area where a lot of organizations haven't really put together a specific documented plan here. And I know we did that at Nevada Humane Society when Bonnie was executive director there. And it's pretty easy to do, but you think about the common questions that are out there and the common, what is your story and how do we put that into words that it's going to be easy for people to repeat and to share. So another thing for the board to understand is how to cultivate your existing donors into being able to give more. I know Bonnie mentioned that a lot of times you're starting small, but you want to not only keep your donors as sustained givers, but also possibly be able to build them up to higher levels, as appropriate. So one of the things we work with organizations on is this, just developing or supporting and honoring your top donors through this little simple process here. So you obviously need to identify who they are. We'll talk about that in a second. You can call them just to thank them. It's just really important to have contacts with them that aren't about asking all the time. And this type of process here is pretty simple to do. And it is one that board members can do, and they can do it at any time. You want to take notes on the calls, because that's how you can follow up later with referring to either, particular animals that they have or their family or the things that they like, just so you have some way to keep that personal touch going. You can follow up with a card or note or an email after you've talked to them. And then at some point, and maybe several times throughout the year, create special events or mailings that are just for these top donors. because you just want to continue to build that relationship and make people obviously feel special so that they will want to keep supporting you. And I don't remember the statistic, Bonnie might, but the number, is it like 60% of the number of people, I mean, the people that say the reason is they give for not continuing to support is not getting a thank you. So,
Yeah, I think so.
it's a good thing to remember. It's a high percentage. And we talk about, looking at your top donors, and I know this is it's a challenging question as to determine who those people are, because it really depends on your organization, what the level is. What's an easy way to do it is to take, create a list, hopefully you have your donors in a database or an Excel spreadsheet, and just sort by top donors. And you might want to include not just one giving, but maybe over some period of time, and just see how it falls out. Because for some organizations, $100 is huge. I remember even at Nevada Humane Society, $50, I think, was our cutoff for doing some extra special things for some of our donors, because in the early days when Bonnie and I were there, we weren't getting lots of really large donations. Some of the larger groups are more established, maybe a large donor is in the thousands. So you need to determine what that is for you, and then work the plan from there. And as time goes on, I'm sure that your donations are going to go up, and maybe that threshold is going to go up also. So this is just a dialogue on how you can have a chat with your larger gift donors. And we actually have another document that has even more specific or more detailed script that we could provide. I don't believe, not sure if that is on our website. I think it is, Bonnie. You're muted, Bonnie. But here's
You
just
can give it to everyone. I'm not
yeah.
sure.
I'll just make a note of that. So here's just a basic phone call that you can have. Obviously identifying who you are, thanking them for the support, and then talking to them, asking them something personal. And usually it's about the pets, because most people love to talk about their pets, and find out how they became interested in helping, because I think this gives you insight into what's important to them and how you might be able to grow that relationship. And the point at the bottom is critical here. This is not about asking for money. And I know I've gotten feedback on this too, where people are kind of shocked when you don't want to ask, they're not asking them for money, that you just want to have a friendly call with them. This is a list of some additional questions. You kind of have to play it by ear. But if you want to get into a little more details, it gives you more insight as to what is important to them, what they're passionate about. And you'll find, there's, as I'm sure you all know, there's a lot of people that, they really care about one type of animal, or they, really care about one type of program. And not in all cases, but being able to understand where their passions lie and how you can cultivate those, and again, help them feel good about their giving, and obviously then help support the organization. I think we went over this some earlier, just gives you a little more detail on what you can do after a call. And if you note the last bullet here, this is when at a certain point in time, when you feel it's right and appropriate, you may do a specific ask that fits with their interests. And what I found too is I've developed relationships with certain donors, both in the current situation and also when we were at Nevada Humane Society, when I know that somebody has a particular interest and we have that specific need, I go to them and say, we had a woman at Nevada Humane Society that she just really loved to give, to buy tangible things that she could see the results of, and be able to see it in action. And we would go to her, and she had funding that came in, I think, because she was retired periodically. I don't know if it was quarterly or monthly, But we go to her and say, gosh, we really need a new autoclave, or that's a pretty high-end item, but, or I think she bought an incubator for us once, or just some other things for the clinic. And the incubator was great, because then we took a picture of a little kitten in the incubator and sent it to her, and she was thrilled. We have, other people that we know, they particularly like to fund things for staff. Sometimes we had somebody that funded training for us, but we could go to them when we had a need and say, would you fund this? And people really appreciate being specifically asked. I think they feel special. They feel even more special. I mean, you don't want to take advantage of it, obviously, but I also think it helps clarify what they can do that's going to be really meaningful. And then here's a few other examples of things that board members can do to help raise funds. I think one of the biggest things, or maybe the most potential for return, is the second bullet here: make introductions to personal and business contacts who might be potential donors. And this is where, as Bonnie mentioned earlier, you don't have to be the one doing the ask. These introductions are critical. And if you're introducing them either to like your executive director, or if you have a development director or somebody, a development department of some kind that can, that is comfortable with that and can follow up, or maybe even have a combined meeting with them, that is probably one of the biggest things that a board member can do. And of course, there's other things here that can help besides, obviously personal donations. It's just connecting in different ways with the community and the public. There's another item on here that says learn to write grant proposals. And this is something I find that a lot of organizations don't have somebody on staff that can do this regularly. And it's honestly not that difficult, but it does take time. It's something I'm always happy if somebody is interested in doing that, I'm happy to sit down and go through the process with them. But it does take time, and it does take some commitment to keeping the machine running regularly, which is probably the most challenging piece of it. And I know that most organizations can use help with this. And you'll see a link at the bottom here, and we will be sharing a PDF of this as well as the recording, but this is another list, rather, a more substantial list of how to cultivate donors. And here's two simple things that doesn't take much effort that every board member can do. The first one is to post on Facebook or other social media, or share, I should say, on Facebook or social media, other posts that the organization has done. I know not all of us, including myself, are big Facebook people, but it's fairly easy. If you do have a page, it's fairly easy to learn to do this. And if you are active, then it's really easy for you, but it's just reposting things is so simple. And it gets it out to a different set of people, which is key. And then the second one is just to talk about the organization and the successes of the organization with everybody in your network, whether it's your family, friends, work colleagues, or social people you socialize with, or whatever it is, just to be able to keep it top of mind with people and help them understand what the organization does and why it's important and how they can help if they want to.
So this is Bonnie, and I'm just going to wrap up the presentation, and then we'll answer your questions. So one important thing is, it's great to talk about fundraising with the board. It's essential to do so, of course, but to have and create a framework so that you can get buy-in, get a commitment, and follow up with people is really essential to making sure it happens. I don't know how many of you already have a board member contract or a board member agreement. It's an excellent idea. We do have a sample that we could share with you if you would like. And this can outline the responsibilities of a board member. Certainly within your bylaws, it's going to say things like how many meetings will be held a year and how many they are required to attend, that kind of thing. But not every board member is going to pore over the bylaws, especially if yours are long and complicated. So distilling some of the most essential elements into a board member agreement or contract is really incredibly helpful. And a common clause in there is about fundraising and about personal giving. And some organizations request a certain amount that board members commit to give every year, and there's a minimum to be on the board. Other organizations simply ask board members to give an amount that is meaningful to them. And so that can account for board members who may have more time than money, but they can still donate something. There's a big push in the philanthropy world for 100% board giving. I know our local community foundation actually publishes a report every year of the organizations in the community that have 100% board giving. They don't ask how much, but you have to have written a check or given some amount of money every board member in order for your organization to be on this 100% board giving list. So those tools are, and talking about that with the board is so crucial, but even more important, we find, is to create together with each board member a personal fundraising plan that supports the organization's overall plan. So we talked earlier, Diane mentioned how important it was for every board member to have and understand the budget and the financial needs of the organization, as well as the development plan. And if you schedule with every board member at the outset of every year, a meeting, a one-on-one meeting. Now this meeting could be with the board president, or it could be with the executive director and the board president, or the executive director and the development director. It just really needs to be one person, but it could be a couple of people who sit down and ask each board member each year if they have questions about the organization's budget or financial needs, or about the development plan. And then together you can create with that board member this personal fundraising plan, which is really essentially their commitment to fundraise for the organization. And we do have a sample form for this, and we will share that with you via email after the presentation. We also have it here. It's a little hard to read probably, but it's a form that you can customize for your organization. The blue parts especially need to be customized, but there may be other elements that you want to either add or take out. And the first section of it is about what they will give personally and ways that they will give personally. And the second section is about how they will contribute to fundraising for the organization. And it includes many of the things Diane mentioned that board members could do, and a few other ideas as well. And it's definitely the kind of form that you can customize. And then toward the end, there's a place where they can add things too that they think of, ways they can contribute that maybe aren't already on here. And then they sign it, and whoever's going over it with them signs it with them. And it creates an opportunity, just like it's so important to have a job description for staff, right? And when there's a problem, you can pull out the job description and say, well, this is the expectation for this job. And the same is true with this. And, it makes that conversation much less awkward. You've already had a preliminary conversation. They've already agreed. And it gives you a really valuable tool for talking about board member engagement and fundraising.
If I could just add to that too, since we do a lot of recruiting for board members too, I was thinking that it's a great thing to share in the beginning or before people are actually brought on the board, so that they really do understand better the expectations of being a board member.
So we shared this quote earlier, and I just find it so really beautiful about fundraising, and the idea that it captures the sense of joy that you feel. And we really do feel joy when we give, and that's the opportunity you're giving to your supporters to feel that sense of contributing to something that's really important and meaningful to them. And again, Diane went over this quote with you earlier. To me, this just distills down fundraising into 3 essential elements. The first is doing good work, which really so many organizations do. And the second is telling people about it. And this is a place where many board members can contribute and asking them to help. And even if a board member isn't comfortable with the ask, every board member can find ways to tell people about the really great work that the organization's doing. So with that, this is our contact information, but we would love to answer your questions, or perhaps some of you have wisdom you would like to share as well, and that also is perfectly fine. You can either raise your hand and Diane will call on you, or I think there's a little tool where you can raise your hand. I'm not sure where, I'm not seeing mine right at the moment, but you can also just post your question into chat if you would rather do it that way.
I see one post that says we'd like a copy of the board member contract as well. And yes, we can also give you a sample one.
Absolutely. Anyone have anything you'd like to share? It's fine with us now if you unmute, if you would like to share something, or if you'd rather ask your question out loud, that's fine too. If you have advice, I think a few of you do have fundraising experience, so don't hesitate to share.
I want to thank both of you. You have hit so many of the key points that are critical in converting a board into being enthusiastic about fundraising. I've been doing it for 30 years, and as I'm listening to everything you say, you know, I've heard a lot of the different things in the past, and you put it together very well. And actually, it's a reminder to me, I'm starting a new organization and not taking the time that I need to put some of these key points into place. And I'm so glad I got on this, because I will. You did a great job.
Oh, great.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll share those forms with you all in the documents we mentioned, and hopefully those will help because you can customize them for your organization.
And somebody asked about the recording. We'll also be sharing a link to the recording when we share that other information, in case you want to look at it again or share with somebody else.
Anyone else want to share your experience with fundraising or advice that you might have for other folks who joined us today? We welcome that.
I'll just share that when I first started fundraising a couple of years ago, I didn't understand that talking to donors, it's not as complicated as we make it. Very often, I remember at one point going through some text messages with a donor and realizing we had gone from just the very specific like event information or data about our organization to it forming into talking about our pets and, you know, talking about community events. And then basically that comfort level helped, you know, not just establish, but grow that relationship. But it wasn't something that there was really a formula to. It was just, you know, making the effort and then seeing the, you know, it's reciprocated by the donor. They really do want to be involved, but they're not always sure how to be. And so it's like you can kind of open that door as wide as you'd like, or, you know, keep them at a distance if it's more management than benefit. So.
Yeah, that's great.
I do want to comment on a couple other things in chat. Somebody asked, do you have resources for writing grants for shelters? That's from Cindy. And Cindy, if you could send an email to this info@humanenetwork.org email, that actually comes to me, and I will be glad to share some information with you, maybe even just set up a call for you. Another comment was from Joy Smith, one of our favorites at Field Haven Feline Center in Northern California. She said, talk about the monthly donor parties that you turned us onto. We call them cat tail hours. So this is something that we did years ago at Nevada Humane Society. We called them Pets Alive Tours. We did a monthly session, and I know that Joys are doing them monthly also at their place. I believe they're several months into doing them. But anyway, it's where we had a very small group of people that are donors that we had called to thank for their donation without asking any more, invited them this as another thank you, gave them a little presentation of the successes and a tour. And of course, in the case for us, when you have animals to show up close and personal, it's really exciting to them. We had a little meet and greet with some appetizers and drinks, and it was just a very informal, structured, quick. I mean, it was informal in the beginning and then structured through the meeting, but very quick. So we weren't taking a lot of time, and people loved it. Again, it wasn't about asking, it was just about growing those relationships. But sometimes people gave checks right there. Joy, do you want to talk about how it's working for you all?
It's working wonderfully. We're I think this month will be our 5th one or 6th one. And it is work. Sometimes it's only 3 or 4 people or 3 or 4 parties show up. And last one, I think we had about 15 people, which is about the max that we'd want to do. So you can give everybody personal attention. And I don't do anything formal. I did have a guest speaker, which was someone that was a recipient of some of the services that we provide. But people just love to walk through and ask questions. It's very short. I think it's no more than an hour and a half from start to finish. And people really love it. They love the idea of it. It gets them talking, and it has definitely resulted in more donations. And we also encourage people to bring other people with them, to bring somebody else, and we've had that. And we also tell people, if you ever want to come back, we're doing this monthly, and you meet somebody that you say, oh my gosh, I just really want to talk about this great organization that I donate to, just bring them. You know, you can come back anytime and bring anybody you'd be interested in having them learn about our organization. So that was, it's wonderful. It's so easy to do. I recommend everybody does it. And the really big bonus is it gives your staff and volunteers a reason to really shine up the place every month.
That's a great
Yes,
comment.
the same for us. Yes. And if any of you want any other specific information or samples of things that we put together, or please just, again, reach out to me at either the phone number or the info email address that you see on the screen. I'm happy to share. And one thing I love about Joy said was inviting other people. So yes, it wasn't always just people that were already donors. And we even made up little cards that, because we set the dates for the whole year. And it was something that we could hand out to people if you met like a business person or sometimes a government official or somebody that you felt had a lot of potential and wanted to be able to invite them on the spot. So thanks for reminding me that and sharing, Joy.
Diane, if I can jump in, there's a few more questions in chat. And one thing that I wanted to jump back to is about grants. And I feel like it's one of those things that many people feel is more mysterious than it is. And to me, the most important thing is to just follow the directions scrupulously, carefully. Whatever they ask for, do it exactly as they ask for. If they don't say they absolutely don't want to hear stories or see photos, and you're able to add those into the grant application, I think that can be really powerful too. But if they say just fill out this form and don't send anything else, many ask for a letter of LOI, letter of, God, my brain is
intent.
Not intent. And so that is sort of your opening the door with them. You can also for foundations that require an invitation to apply, put them on your mailing list and reach out to them so that they know about you. Somebody here wrote, there's a lot of great stuff in chat, by the way, so I strongly urge you to try to read through. There's a lot of wisdom and people sharing great successes and fabulous ideas that are really quite valuable. So do take a look at that. But someone wrote that grants are very competitive, and that's true. And that's why we try not to put too much emphasis on them. On the other hand, you don't want to leave money on the table, and there are local foundations that are small that will only give to organizations in a limited geographic area. So trying to identify those. We use Instrumental. It's a program that Diane found that we use to track our grant applications and whatnot, but we also did it for years without the help of that program. So if if that doesn't work for you, that just finding someone willing to do the work and legwork on grants, it can be worthwhile. And there was a question from Rachel at Farrell at Home about any suggestions for a new nonprofit. And it does talk about events. And I think that, you know, Joy's, what Joy just shared is really great if you have any kind of a facility, a clinic, a shelter, you know, any kind of community, anything where people could come in. I think that it is very powerful. If you don't, I tend to caution people about events because they can be very time consuming and very even expensive to put together, and the return can be questionable. So I like to suggest that people focus on building a donor list, so that you can keep in touch with people via email, and also direct mail is still an important part of fundraising. And so maintaining a donor list, I think, is one of the most important things. A nonprofit, it's one of your most valuable assets, because if you have a list of contacts, you can always raise money.
And I would suggest take a look at the sample fundraising plan that we provided or will provide. And you can see all the different types of strategies, because I think that even if you're new, having kind of a well-rounded plan is still going to be helpful. But you want to be sure you're putting your biggest effort into the areas that are going to get the biggest return for you too. So remember that pie chart also. And
there's such great stuff being posted on here. One group in Kentucky is saying they raised $30,000 with I'm supposing a group yard sale, that a bunch of people come together and donate stuff for the organization. And, you know, that can be a great thing to do. Absolutely. So, yeah, a lot of great ideas have been posted.
So if you think of other questions or just have other ideas, or would like to set up a free consult with us, we're happy to do that to help you specifically with your organization and creating or implementing some of the plans that we have mentioned. So please do reach out. We would love to talk to you. I think Bonnie wants to say something else.
I do. There's another thing in chat, and Adrian is asking about their volunteer group that's spread out geographically, and have you had success with Zoom meetings that motivate? And yes, I think really Zoom can be a powerful tool. One of the things we recently did for our clinic was we had an animal behaviorist do a series of 3 talks, and we invited people, and we too have supporters all over the country. And so they could tune in for an hour presentation by an animal behaviorist about dog behavior and cat behavior. And you could also just do quarterly advisory committee meetings, and we try to make them interesting for the attendees by including stories. And again, we're just happy to talk with any of you if you have specific questions that relate to your organization, and to talk that through with you.
Great. Well, I think that was there's one more post. Okay. Yeah. There was a thank you. Well, you're welcome. And we were thrilled to see how many people joined us today. And I do hope you all reach out to us as you have needs, and happy to set up a personalized chat with you all. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you for contributing your ideas too to the chat. That was really appreciated and great.
Absolutely. So hope you all have a good evening wherever you are, and hope to see you again.
All right. Bye-bye.